Hello, Science 24. We're going to do the last lesson in this unit. Lesson 4, Energy Conversions in Biological Systems. Okay, this is a big lesson. We're going to talk about chemical reactions that produce or absorb energy. For example, burning fossil fuels and cold packs. We are also going to talk about the requirements of this thing called photosynthesis. We need CO2, we need water, we need chlorophyll and chloroplasts, and we need sunlight. We're going to talk about this thing called respiration, which we need glucose and oxygen, and those get converted to energy, carbon dioxide, and water. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. We have what's called endothermic reactions and exothermic reactions. And exothermic reactions release energy. I always think of exothermic like exit. They both start with EX. Energy is exiting. So when you burn a piece of wood, like on a fire, at a fireplace, around a campfire, you feel warmth. That means the wood is exothermic. It's giving off heat. When you burn natural gas, propane, gasoline, it gives off heat. So exothermic reactions give off heat. So here's an exothermic reaction. Watch this. CH4 is natural gas. Okay? And whenever I take a molecule like natural gas and I burn it in the presence of oxygen, so natural gas plus oxygen, I make carbon dioxide and I make water, and I also make one other thing. I make energy, and I put that down by plus kilojoules. This is energy. So I got this molecule plus this. I slam those together really fast. I burn them, and I make CO2, water, and energy. That's an exothermic reaction. Whenever kilojoules are on this side of the equation, it means it's exothermic. Okay? All right, now I have something pre-programmed here. Let's watch this. Okay, those are called reactants. Those are called products. And when I have kilojoules over there, that means it's an exothermic reaction. So that's energy. So if kilojoules are on the product side, the reaction is exothermic. Propane, C3H8, same thing. When I take propane and I burn it, I make CO2 and water and energy. The balancing is different, 3 and 4 versus 2 and 1, but it's still an exothermic reaction. They look like this. On a stove, if I take methane, which is, and I light it on fire, I get these, I get this blue flame coming out of here, right? That's what methane, natural gas looks like when it burns. Okay? And you don't see it because it's really, they're invisible, but CO2 comes off of there and water comes off of there. Now the water is in a gaseous form. You don't see rain falling off of your stove because it's not H2O liquid, it's H2O gas. Okay? But you also get something else. You also get energy out of this. Energy kicks out of here. So that is an exothermic reaction. Okay? All right, we'll watch my programmed deal there. Yeah. So here's what an exothermic reaction looks like. Okay? Gives off heat. All right, good. Now let's talk about endothermic reactions. So an endothermic reaction absorbs energy, and this is how cold packs work. So I got my reactants, I got my products. Now, NH4NO3 is ammonium nitrate. That's what's in a cold pack. And when I pop a cold pack and I mix the water and the NH4NO3, I make this new substance, NH4 positive, NO3 negative. You don't need to worry about that. You just need to know that this happens. Kilojoules are on this side of the equation. Whenever kilojoules are on the reactant side, it's endothermic. Okay? That's what kilojoules over here means. It's endothermic. Energy actually gets sucked into the chemicals, not exit. It's going in, not coming out. So watch this. Okay, there's my kilojoules, my energy. If kilojoules are on the reactant side, the reaction's endothermic. So watch this. There's a cold pack. I do this in class sometimes. I'll cut open the cold pack and I'll show you what's in there. There's two things. There's a little pouch of water, and then these looks like salt, basically. Actually, it looks like a fertilizer, which is almost what it is. So I'm going to take my little beaker, I'm going to drop my little fertilizer, my ammonium nitrates into the water, and when I stir those around and they dissolve, the temperature of the water goes down because this is what's happening. As they dissolve, energy is going into the chemical. It's actually absorbing energy. Makes the water cold, then you put the cold pack on your ankle and pulls the heat out of your ankle, makes it feel cold. Okay? So that is an endothermic reaction. All right, now we got to talk about photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is this reaction. So photosynthesis is when I have carbon dioxide plus water and plus kilojoules energy, which means this is an endothermic reaction. When I have that situation, I make this molecule, which is glucose and oxygen. Okay? So this is what plants do. Plants take carbon dioxide out of the air, water out of the soil, and they grab energy from the sun, and they make glucose and oxygen. Okay? Now I have some pre-programming here. Let's take a look. So there's my kilojoules. That's endothermic. So I take carbon dioxide. I take water. I take chlorophyll inside chloroplasts. So remember, this is a chloroplast, and all those little discs in there, that's chlorophyll. They contain chlorophyll. This is where the photosynthesis reaction happens. And then I get my energy in the form of sunlight. So here's what happens in a plant. CO2 and water from the rain that goes into the soil and sunlight. Here's my kilojoules right here. So I got CO2, I got water, I got energy from the sun that goes into the plant, and then the plant does its work inside here, and it makes this molecule and this molecule. Okay? So it makes glucose and oxygen. So oxygen goes back up into the air and we breathe it, and then the glucose molecule stays in the plant. Okay? All right, now watch this. So there's my photosynthesis reaction. There's my plant cell. There's the rain, there's the sun. They all go into the chloroplast. Okay? So carbon dioxide makes its way into the cell. Water gets into the cell. And then kilojoules from the sun get into the cell. And then they make glucose and oxygen. So they make glucose. That little blue dot is my glucose molecule. And also oxygen comes off. Oxygen gets released back into the outer environment. The opposite happens. The exact opposite of that reaction happens in other living things that aren't plants. Animals. Also happens in plants too, but here's what respiration is. It's the exact opposite reaction. My glucose and my oxygen are on the reactant side, and my products are carbon dioxide and water and energy. The energy that came from the sun that went into the plant now gets converted and comes back out of the plant. Okay? When kilojoules are on that side, this is an exothermic reaction. All right, so look at what happens with the deer. The deer comes along and eats the plant. Okay, a little bit of plant. So the glucose gets into the deer. Okay? The deer also breathes oxygen. Oxygen gets into the deer. And then the deer's body does what we call cellular respiration. It takes the glucose and basically burns it. This looks like a burning reaction. We take that plus oxygen. That's like burning. That's just like this. Whoops. That's just like CH4 plus 2O2, the same as burning. Okay? And then the deer breathes out carbon dioxide, and the deer also needs water, and so it makes its own water from this, and it also importantly gets energy. When you eat food, this is the energy that you're getting. And where did it come from? It came from the sun when the plant did photosynthesis and got the energy from the sun, which is cool, right? You're eating sunlight energy. Okay. So we take glucose, we take oxygen. Glucose gets into the deer, and the deer breathes oxygen. That gets into the deer. And then they convert, and the products are carbon dioxide and water and energy. So CO2 comes out of the deer. The deer has water as well and energy, right? The deer feels hot. It makes heat energy, and it uses the energy from that molecule to power all of its cells. Okay? Cool stuff. All right. Let's look at some other ways to look at this. There's an animal cell. The animal cell takes the glucose. There's the oxygen. Oxygen gets in through the bloodstream. And remember, this is the mitochondria. That's the powerhouse of the cell. So glucose and oxygen are in there. And then when cellular respiration happens, CO2 comes out. H2O comes out. And also energy. And that's where this cell gets its energy. Okay, so CO2 comes out. Water comes out. And energy. And that's what gives the cell its energy. Okay? All right, another way to look at this. This is almost like it's in, let's look at the whole thing now. So imagine photosynthesis on this side, and then cellular respiration on this side. Notice the reactions are the opposite. CO2, water, kilojoules. CO2, water, kilojoules. This is endo. This is exothermic. Okay? Also notice that this makes glucose and oxygen. This uses glucose and oxygen. So these reactions are the opposite. The main difference here is that the ones that are reactants here are products over here. Okay? And also something to notice, kilojoules are on that side, kilojoules are on that side, right? This is endo, this is exo. Okay, so let's watch the little animations I've got. So, CO2 goes into the plant. Water goes into the plant. Energy goes in from the sun. And then we make glucose. and oxygen. And that glucose and oxygen can get breathed in by an animal. Well, the oxygen gets breathed in, the glucose gets eaten. And then those glucose and oxygen react inside the mitochondria and make CO2 and H2O. And those get pushed back out into the bloodstream. And we also get energy. Okay? All right, so that's photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Okay, now let's go on to food here. Real quick, food contains carbohydrates. And carbohydrates are substances such as sugars and starches. And the whole point of carbohydrates is they give you energy. You hear a lot of people talking about they don't want too many carbs, don't want too much energy because then it gets stored as fat. Next, we have proteins. Proteins are essential for building muscle mass. Okay? Have these things called amino acids, which I won't get into. But protein is for muscle. Next, we have fats. Now, fats, I always worry to talk about fat because people think, oh, I don't want to get fat and all that. Your body needs fat. Fat is healthy. Remember those cells we looked at? Your cell wall is made of fat. All the cell membranes in your body, the outer layer of each cell is made up of lipids, and you need fats in your body. Fats are healthy. Now you got to have a balance, but fat is where energy gets stored, and it also helps your skin be healthy. Okay, that's just two things I'm going to mention about fats. Don't be afraid of eating fats. You just have to have a balance. Okay? All right. And there needs to be a balance between food intake and energy output. So if you take in 2,000 kilojoules of energy, you need to expend some of that so that your body uses it in a useful way rather than it gets stored. Okay? Now, remember, all body types are different too, and I know young people worry about their image. As you get older, you don't worry about that as much. Anyway, okay, that's it. That's a little bit of a longer lesson. Lots in there. Okay, there's some assignments to do, and then that is it for this unit.